Uh,
Hi.
hey there. Thanks for being on the show. Uh,
Absolutely.
you,
Happy to be here.
recently I've been starting all these with the exact same question, which
hmm
is feels super weird but feels necessary. Which is, how are you doing? Are you okay? Are you safe? Is your family safe?
Yeah, yeah, I'm doing well. I'm cooped up in my apartment with my two cats. I still get to see my partner because we were traveling together immediately before we started socially isolating, so we have the same risk level. So I'm not like 100% totally alone, so that's nice. And I've been dealing with my boredom by playing lots of Animal Crossing. So
It's
life is
I
all
mean
right.
I feel like you're really embracing a nationwide trend because it's like everybody right now is either playing Animal Crossing, watching
Mhm.
Tiger King, or they are like working in a very hazardous situation. Those are the three things that are happening in America right now.
That's literally it. Yeah, those are your
Yeah,
only options. So I'm very thankful that I don't have to be working in a super hazardous situation right now. Yeah.
absolutely. And so, I mean, let's jump in and talk about your work. You
hmm
are an adult film performer. How many years have you been in that industry?
So a total of three. I was in the industry. I first started in the adult film industry in 2012. I was an active performer 2012 through 2015. Then I retired, moved away from California and lived a pretty normal, what people in the adult industry refer to as a civilian life. Um, and then just this past January, I got back into the industry and started shooting again. So cumulatively, about 3.5 years with a
What made
big break in
you
between.
Well, what made you decide to take that big break and ultimately come back?
There were a lot of factors that went into that decision. But I would say the biggest one was the stigma of what I did for a living really, really got to me because I basically did not communicate with my family, like my immediate family, my parents, my siblings, for almost the entire time, that 2012 through 2015 period. So that was really, really mentally hard. And this was back in a time people talk a little more now about mental health as it relates to adult film performers, but back then no one was really talking about it. So I didn't feel like there was a good support system to deal with that. I was super depressed, like borderline suicidal. And ultimately it was like to preserve myself, I had to leave the industry. So it actually didn't have anything to do with my work. The problem was never like doing a form of sex work for a living. Like I never had issue with that. I really loved my job. It was just that I couldn't handle doing my job and also all the pressure from society to not like my job, if that makes sense. And
No,
I was also
absolutely.
younger, and now that I'm 31 now, like getting back into it feels way more like the right decision now because I have tools where I can actually deal with all that pressure.
What types of tools, are valuable to someone to deal with that pressure? What do you find helpful? What should other people in the industry be taking advantage of?
Well, just taking care of your mental health for sure is a huge one. Like being honest with yourself about when you're feeling burnout with work and need to take a break, and it's okay to take a break. It's okay to decline requests for work. If you're working too often, sometimes that can be a good thing sometimes, if you're making good money because you work a lot, but it can also be very draining. So being honest with yourself about how you feel about doing work, therapy, I think everyone can probably use therapy, but um, it's nothing to be embarrassed about. Seeing a therapist, I see a therapist, and have been for years. I started seeing a therapist before I left the industry back in like late 2014, just out of necessity and not knowing what else to do. So I'm a huge proponent of therapy and like counseling, um, and then just having a good support network, in place as far as like your friends in real life, like partners, or just the people that you see on a day-to-day basis. And for a lot of film performers, adult film performers, it doesn't mean family because a lot of us are stigmatized and have tense family relationships or are basically written off by our family. So it can be your chosen family, like a close-knit group of friends, But I think it's super important to have that group of people that's non-judgmental that you can rely on to support you emotionally when you need it.
I mean, it sounds like that would be absolutely necessary. I mean,
Yeah.
speaking of therapy, what type of healthcare, options are there for people in the adult film industry? Is there like a
Um,
union that provides things like SAG or?
so yeah, the Free Speech Coalition, and they have a website that anyone in the public can look at. You know, you'd have to be a member of the industry to get behind the member wall, essentially. But it's freespeechcoalition.com. They do a lot of work for it's kind of our trade association, closest thing we have to a union. Um, so they have programs such as like a performer stipend that gets sent out every month for those who are registered and request it to help with the cost of regular STI testing because that can be very expensive. They also have it's not like a healthcare uh, plan, but they do have a prescription and like healthcare discount program that you get if you're a member of FSC. But what I do and what I did when I lived in California back in 2012 to 2015 is I just bought, you know, my option through the marketplace. So I pay out of pocket for my own healthcare, and it's like $500 to $600 a month.
Now, is that something that's, I mean, because that's quite a lot of money. Is that something that's
Yeah.
out of reach for most people in the industry?
I would say for a lot of people it definitely is. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you find a lot of performers who are more like either they're getting started or they're more on the amateur side of things. So they may not be super famous, well known like porn stars, but a lot of the time what you'll see is that they still have a civilian job, and that's where they're getting their healthcare from. Or they're in a partnership and their partner has healthcare that extends to them if they're married. So but yeah, really for us the only option is like buying healthcare through your state or healthcare.gov marketplace.
I mean, it seems to me, I mean, you find this industry to industry to industry of all kinds of work that there are these large kind of benefit and healthcare gaps that
Yeah.
do not get talked about. To me, I think that's a very important story. And especially in a line of work where I think your health is probably important to your ability to continue to work.
Oh,
Uh,
absolutely. It's important to me, obviously, for myself to remain physically healthy, but it also is a huge thing for the rest of the performer pool. Like, you're talking about a group of the kind of the core performer pool. And when I say I just mean like, regular working porn actors who are in Vegas and Southern California. I mean, we're talking about a pool of people that's maybe like 300, honestly. It's not that huge. Like, yes, there are a ton of people making porn and putting it on the internet, but the people who get hired by like the main companies that put stuff on like Pornhub and sites like that, it's not actually that many people. So one person getting sick can spread a sickness to everyone else very, very quickly.
yeah, and it is weird. I think people don't realize that it is such a close knit industry, and I mean, even if it's geographically spread out, I assume there must be a very tight knit community surrounding that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, you see it's just like it's so funny to me because having retired or, taken a break for several years and going back, it's like a lot of the people that I knew back then are still in the industry now. So in a lot of ways it's like coming back and getting back together with like old friends. um and especially if you're talking about like men in the porn industry, there's very few men that actively work regularly in porn films. I mean, a couple handfuls, like 10 to
Why
15
does
guys.
why does that disparity in talent exist? Do you think?
Um, so I think there's a couple reasons. First of all, when I talk about kind of industry standards or like things that are typical in the industry, I'm always talking about the mainstream American adult film industry, which so nothing that I'm saying is going to necessarily be representative of like overseas, stuff shot in Eastern Europe or in like the UK. Um, and I'm also talking specifically about mainstream straight porn, which does also exclude a lot of like queer porn, like, there's a lot of different types of porn out there, but when I'm always talking about the stuff that is mostly what I shoot, which is very typical, you know, what you would find on like Brazzers,
Yeah.
which is a huge company that almost everyone's heard of.
Just very heteronormative work,
Yes.
basically.
Yeah. So when we're talking about that type of porn, of course, everything is very much shot for a male gaze. So they want tons of variety of women and women who look different ways. No one really cares. No one really cares. The fans supposedly don't really care that much about the men or what the men look like because they're not there to watch the men. So that's one of the reasons why you don't have as many male performers. The other reason, and really the main one, is that there are very few men who can satisfy the job requirements. That sounds like a weird, dirty pun. It's not. I mean, literally, like, it is very, very hard for most men to perform sexually in a room with a lot of other men watching you. you know, if you're super straight and, that might make you uncomfortable. And then just like pressure, you just because you enjoy your job and have fun doesn't necessarily mean that you're always going to be paired with a scene partner that you are super excited to work with. Um, there are definitely personality clashes on porn sets. That's a thing that happens just like in any work environment. And then you also might just like have a bad day and not super be mentally in the best place to be doing that shoot on that day. But canceling a shoot means killing a paycheck for like a crew of 10 to 15 people, depending on the size of that production. So no one wants to be responsible for doing that. So there's all kinds of situations where male performers can come up short, if you will, just due to the pressure of the situation. It's very hard. It's a very hard job. Like, I have a lot of respect for men who are porn performers. Because like, if I were a guy or just a person with a penis, I don't think I could do it.
Is there,
It's
I
funny
mean, is
because I do
there,
it now, but I don't think I could do it. I had different anatomy, honestly.
it's just a different equipment set.
Yes, yeah.
Um, is there any type of, I mean, is there any type of organization or is there like a push to try to change some of that dynamic? A lot of that sounds very societally based, or
Yeah.
at least, so, I mean, is there something that's actively happening that's trying to destigmatize or lessen the burden of, it sounds so weird to say that, but of male performers and straight porn?
Yeah. The lessen the burden of the I don't know what I'm allowed to say or if there are things I'm not allowed to say on the stream. But like the
You, you,
burden of
you,
the cum shot essentially is what I'm talking about, is like that pressure to, like, well, we have to have this at the end. If I've been in situations where we're filming and a guy just can't produce it, like, for whatever, like, it's you were really hungover, like you were out too late, who knows, there are all kinds of reasons, and you just can't, maybe you can do the scene, like you can physically have sex and enjoy it, but you can't produce a cum shot. And so they're like, in porn sometimes they have to fake it, they use Cetaphil
yeah.
to fake it. There's a couple different substances, but Cetaphil is the most common one, which is, a face
Like
wash
like
that's
the
just
like
like
the lotion
looks.
like the lotion you get at Walgreens.
Yeah, yeah, it looks like cum. So everyone who hears this, if you use that for your face wash, I'm sorry. Next time you wash your face, you're gonna be thinking about that. Um,
What other industry secrets can you lay out bare for the world to witness here?
um, okay, so especially related to like bodily functions, that's fun stuff. Women in porn, or people who menstruate in porn, don't stop shooting just because they're menstruating. Typically, the most common solution for that is getting those latex-free cosmetic wedge sponges, like the white ones that look like triangle shaped, and you just put them in your vagina.
Wow. That
and it
I see.
absorbs all the
I never
blood,
would have thought of that. I never
and
would
no
have
one
thought of
would ever
that.
know. Yeah.
It's like it's like kind of incredible to hear this because like you think of like a big budget like Hollywood films, like everything's CGI, and this
Yeah.
almost in so many ways is like, no, this is the makeup department, like just making it happen. This is old school movie making right here.
It's just, yeah, it's movie magic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Um, dick drugs are very common also with um, male performers.
like Viagra, Cialis.
There's one that is called Caverject and is essentially very close chemically to like embalming fluid. It might even just be straight up embalming fluid. I'm not sure because I don't use it. But you inject it into the shaft of the penis, and it is. I read a memoir. I don't have it with me, but a former porn performer named Danny Wilde. Well, that was his porn star name. He wrote a memoir that I read, and he's got like there's like a whole chapter where he talks about his relationship with like starting this drug and like becoming pretty reliant on it in order to shoot scenes, and just it can like there's this, I forget what the medical term is, but there's a syndrome where like if you use a little too much of a like too high of a dose of the drug injected in there, it causes your penis to swell and fill with blood, and you have to like go get it physically drained at the ER. So that's, yeah, so that's like a thing, and that's, you know, it's pretty common for men, especially newer guys in the industry, to use that, um just because it's the easiest way to just make sure you're always ready and can perform reliably. So
And so
just another way to deal with all that pressure.
I mean, does it just maintain an erection, or does it cause like a size increase, or I mean, what's really the
It just
specific like
maintains an
impetus for it?
erection. It's
Got it.
basically like an instant erection, and it's 100% a physical thing. So it's like your brain can be literally anywhere and your penis will respond. Like,
Wow.
yeah. So it's not in the same way that like, you know, Viagra or like a Cialis, like those types, it works differently than those do.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, and it makes sense. I mean, the immediacy needed to film. You know, I mean,
Hmm.
it's you probably don't have time to wait for arousal.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's a lot of downtime on set, but that can be a bad thing. You know, it can be a good thing if you need time to work up to it, or it can be terrible because it might mean that you're having a lot of resets in the middle of filming and cuts. And instead of having, you know, turning on a camera and having sex for 30 minutes and then finishing, you might be having sex for 10 minutes and then stopping and doing nothing for 30 minutes. And then, okay, now we got to go again. And then you stop 10 minutes later and then you sit around for another 30 minutes. Like,
What do you do to fill the downtime?
um, if you really enjoy your job, you keep having sex when the camera's turned off. That's perfectly allowed. Like no one looks down on that. You are on a porn set. You know, generally it's a good thing if that's happening because it means everyone's having a good time and really enjoying their job. Um, you talk, you watch YouTube videos, you eat some snacks. It's like what do people do in the break room at an office, you know?
Yeah. You keep your blood sugar up, have a cup of coffee so you stay alert.
Yeah.
Yes. I think that is like, one of the things that is interesting is that it's at least it seems to me from this conversation so much like just any other job in so
Yeah.
many respects, and I feel like there's a lot of people who probably don't anticipate that.
That's very true. It is a job like any other. It's a really weird, crazy, fun job, but there's definitely days when it's work. And I should also mention that for most of us, and myself included, you know, an average day's work usually doesn't involve going to a professional porn set. It's more like I wake up in the morning, I check all my social media, I check my OnlyFans, which is like one of my main sources of income, and I have to respond to the like 75 DMs asking for very specific things. Like, I basically have a catalog of videos that I send on request to people. And so I'm essentially most of my day is just reading DMs, typing a response, and then uploading a video and, you know, seeing how long my Wi-Fi decides to take to upload it that day. It's pretty
How
boring.
how have websites like OnlyFans changed the pornographic industry overall?
Oh, massively. Like it didn't OnlyFans didn't exist when I left in 2015, and then coming back and, creating my profile there and starting to use that for income. At first I thought, oh, this will just be like a nice supplemental income, until I get back to shooting professional stuff in LA. It'll be like a little side gig. And now it's the other way around. It's actually more my job is social media. When I do go out to LA to shoot, that's kind of the side gig. It's more like doing professional shoots is a way to get your face out there and advertise that you do have all these other personal paid social media profiles. So it's very independent.
What is the interaction with fans like?
Um, Usually it's pretty cordial. Like I mean, I have fans that some fans demand almost no time of me. They just want to send a message and say like, "Hey, like I'm a big fan. I've been watching you since my first year of college." Like I get messages like that. And I'm like, "Well, that's cool. It's been 8 years, so that's a long time." Okay. Um, and then I have other fans that will literally message me every single day with like a different themed photo of the day. Like, yeah, your
Yeah, it
face
can
is
be a
very familiar.
lot. Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean
so
that can be a lot.
yeah, and then there are other ones who just want to message me and talk about Animal Crossing.
Do you have any like piece of fan mail that sticks out to you as something that you remember as being like really cool or really neat or really weird?
Um, yeah, a fan in Minnesota just sent me, like, snail mailed me a package of zines. Like, I haven't had a chance to read them yet, but it's like actual, like, zines that he made.
I mean,
And they're
that's
very
super cool.
political from what I can tell. But I need to sit down and read them. But that was really cool. Like, I don't get a lot of fan mail just because it's more rare these days for people to actually physically mail things. But I get a lot of emails. Most of them are inappropriate, and I just delete them immediately.
That makes sense. It's it is weird how emboldened people like can feel to like send things to
Yeah.
like complete strangers over the internet. It is highly
Yeah.
shocking.
Your
Yeah.
average woman on social media gets a fair amount of unsolicited dick pics. So imagine now being a porn star or a sex worker, um, and that's just really escalated.
Yeah. I assume
I
if
don't.
you
My DMs are all filtered, and I do not touch the unfiltered.
oh
Like
god no.
yeah, I don't look at it
I
at
assume
all.
you probably have like you could like print them out and make like a coffee table book like that big at least, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, sometimes I do. Who, if someone like publicly tweets an unsolicited dick pic at me in a Twitter reply chain, like I save the photo and then tweet it back at them. I've done that a couple times. It's like a public shaming. Like, well, you already put it there in public. Let me just shame you further. Maybe they just like it and that's the attention that they want, but I don't know. I feel like
I've never
it
understood
tickles me to
exactly.
do it. So,
I've never understood that side of it because like I have way too much shame in my own body to like want to broadcast like those parts of it out there. Um,
some people just have none at all, which is
clear.
fine. I guess I have no shame. I'm naked all over the internet. I'm not going to judge that. It's
No,
more
of
just the
course not.
like, the just assuming, especially like I tweeted something about Animal Crossing and there's a penis in the reply chain. And I'm like, get this out of here. So I report it, but I save the photo before I report it.
Um, yeah, I wanted to talk. You were talking earlier about how OnlyFans, for example, has become like one of your
Mhm.
biggest parts of your income. But like, what are the different revenue streams that are available to a performer? There's like this the traditional like film
Mhm.
shoots. There's the user generated content like that. But
Mhm.
is there merchandising like book deals? Like what's going on?
Yeah, so merchandising is a pretty big one. Like, I don't have any merchandising deals. I'm hoping to get something like that in the works soon. But like Fleshlight's probably the biggest one that most people are familiar with. Um, they make like basically sex toys and masturbation sleeves that are branded with like this performer's face and everything, and molded to look like their genitals. So that's a huge one. There's other types of merchandising deals with other sex toy companies. Um, a lot of women in porn do feature dancing tours, which is, you know, like you go to different strip clubs across the country and you do a couple nights in a row of feature dancing. I've never done that. No one, I promise no one would want to watch me dance. It'd be bad. And then clip sales is huge, which is similar to like an OnlyFans, but a clip store is, so like manyvids.com is a huge clip sales platform. It's not necessarily membership based, so that's what makes that different from like an OnlyFans model. And then private Snapchat is a big thing too. That is more of a membership based thing. A lot of people don't understand what private Snapchat is. Like, so I'm going to explain that just real shortly
Please
because
do, because I was about
I
to
didn't get
ask,
what it
because
was
I don't really understand it either.
So first of all, it's like under the table. Snapchat has it very clear in their TNC that you can't charge for access to Snapchat. However, people do it. So essentially, it's like a cottage industry of adult performers and just anyone who has a good fan base that's willing to pay to see a special version of their Snapchat. So essentially, you just make a Snapchat account, make it entirely fully private so no one can friend request you unless you accept it. And then they have to pay X amount before you will accept it. So, and people will do that like monthly. They'll do it as like a one-time thing. So at first I thought private Snapchat. So it's like, how do I get this set up through Snapchat? That's not how it works. That's not how it works. You're just like selling access to a private account, essentially. That's the easiest way to
Interesting.
put it. Yeah, so that's super popular. Gosh, there's yeah, I just social media in general is huge. Like especially with Instagram now being such a massive social media platform, there are plenty of women who started out in porn and essentially don't really shoot much porn anymore. They just have 5 million Instagram followers and they do paid promo on Instagram and that's their job. Like you can make a
I
living
mean,
doing just
it's
that.
that to me is still like the wildest thing. Like I've gotten from like having a small social media following or
Mhm.
smaller than that. I get free stuff sometimes to like promote it. Like someone will send me like a hoodie or like whatever. And but it's
Yeah.
like doesn't I can never imagine like turning that into like a full time like profession. And then like I like will talk to someone else. And they're like, oh yeah, I made like $10,000 last year just off of you know
Yeah.
posting myself eating this chocolate bar semi seductively.
It's wild. Yeah, no, it's
Yeah.
totally nuts. Like Fashion Nova is a clothing company, and I swear to everyone on Instagram is a Fashion Nova sponsor. Like, woo. But it's on one hand, it's like just it's such a different like model now for porn stars than it was back when I first started. But it's also cool. You know, like a company like Fashion Nova, for example. This is a mainstream clothing company that as far as I'm aware, is like one of the only mainstream companies that is actually okay with partnering with people who are adult industry performers or like adult industry aligned in any way. Whereas a lot of companies have it like there are some companies that I have looked into doing like social media partnerships with because I really love the brand, like powerlifting clothing companies, for example, because I'm really into powerlifting. And I'm like, I've got this Instagram following. It's 96% men. A lot of them are powerlifters. I would love to like partner with this company and advertise your gear and like wear it, especially if it's something I use. But most companies just it's in their terms, like they will not do anything with anyone who's related to sex work because they're
Which
like,
is
I don't know. I guess the idea is like, well, now it's not family friendly, which is like,
it's just it seems so incredibly asinine in 2020 to me to like continue to maintain, and especially like from a business standpoint, it's like, are you really selling more crap to like I don't know some evangelical
right.
who is up in arms about this, or like to your 5 million thirsty and like Instagram fans, like which one?
I know.
Um,
Yeah.
And it's also, I don't know, it's just like, it's like offensive to me in a way that's just like, I don't know, just like, just anyone who like would boycott a company over something like that, just like get a hobby, dude.
It
Like
is a
just get
little,
a fucking
yeah.
hobby. Like it's
Uh,
like anytime I see anyone like pissed off at like anything that isn't like a major like ethical violation, I'm just like, you need something in your life. There's like
yeah.
there, you know, like I've spent 2 weeks watching Star Trek right now, and there's 2 more months of it for me to get through. Do that. Like fuck.
I'm just rewatching Schitt's
Uh,
Creek.
yeah, the finale's coming up soon, right?
Ugh, I know. Yeah. I'm so sad.
Eugene,
Excited but
Eu,
sad.
Eugene Levy, what a godsend.
Yeah. I love all of them.
I wanna ask you a couple more questions while we got some time left here. You have
Sure.
a podcast yourself.
I do.
What? Tell me how that came to be and what it's about.
It's called After Adult. Afteradult.com has all the links to social media and actually listening to it on, iTunes or Apple Podcasts or anywhere that you find podcasts. But I started the podcast before I returned to working in adult film, which is why it's called After Adult, because the idea was that I was going to talk about my experiences having been in the porn industry and what it's like, becoming a pretty well-known porn star. I was like nominated for lots of awards. I was working regularly. I was frequently in like the top 10 on Pornhub. So super recognizable, and then leaving and going to live in the middle of the middle of nowhere and working civilian jobs. So the first like 7 episodes are just me talking and like telling stories. And now I have a co-host. So my co-host Rachel joined after like 6 months of me doing the podcast by myself, and she's still my co-host now. So it's the two of us. And now it's kind of morphed into a show that's about just us talking about life, also talking about my experiences in the porn industry. And we're going to start bringing on people for interviews as well. But essentially, the goal of the show is just to kind of shine a light on the industry and some of the behind the scenes stuff that happens, educate people about that, and, keep it fun and informative and super sex positive.
Awesome. And so we're getting to the end of the program, and I've taken to ending all of these with the same question, which is always a huge pivot. But if through your career or through your life, just in any way, what is it that you hope most to convey to people?
That's a great question, because I would have to distill a lot of things down into like one sentence. But I would say that kind of my MO in
You can
life
ramble
and
a bit. It's kind of the
okay.
point of the show.
Yeah, I guess it is. So essentially my goal now is to normalize sex work and sex workers. That's the best way I can put it. It's, I had to be honest with myself when I decided to go back into the industry about the fact that I felt like this is my favorite job I've ever had. It's the best job. I'm the happiest doing it, and I shouldn't feel shame about that. And there are plenty of people that want me to feel shame about it. There's also tons of misinformation out there about sex work and what it looks like. A lot of people conflate it with sex trafficking. So that's essentially what I want to do, is be super vocal about the porn industry, different forms of sex work, and kind of bust the stigma, help normalize it a little bit, especially in these days of like OnlyFans. It's actually much more common than people think.
I would actually almost like to do a whole follow up with you at a different time, just about that subject specifically.
Yeah.
But we have kind of hit the normal time limit. I try to keep these in here.
It's good to
Um,
try to keep a podcast within a normal time limit. I'm very bad at that on my podcast.
yeah, I like started to realize there's a point that people just drop off.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. You got to try to keep it like tight.
yeah. All right. Well, again, thank you so much, Siri. This is Sorry for Rambling, and we will see you next time. Thank you again for
Sorry for
coming on.
rambling. Thanks, Alex.